All right, welcome back to Survivor, the funny 115. All right,
Zach, I'm in need for a good chortle, a
Chortle.
good chuckle.
Yeah.
Yes, a good laugh, a
If you don't,
lull.
if you don't know, the funny 115 is an old web. It's like a website where he has Mario Lanza had hosted his 115 funny moments in Survivor history, and he's had a couple versions of these too. So, which we've watched enough. I think we probably by the time we're done this, we'll have watched enough for the second version because it's like the next
Oh
batch of
wow, okay.
seasons, and then
Oh, that's fun.
there's a third version too, I think. But this one goes up to I forget what it was, like season
Guatemala.
12 or somewhere around there, Guatemala or Panama, and it's just funny moments written up. I thought about like getting some, like they do have YouTube clips of some of the moments.
Yeah.
I should have queued that up.
Yeah. I had my friend Kaylee. Actually, we were talking about. I said so. I quoted "Bye Bye Denver Diva,"
Hmm.
and then uh, she shared the clip, and I noticed, oh, that someone compiled this clip in Funny 115. I was like, I wonder if that. I bet that has something to do with Funny 115
Hmm.
clips. Bye bye Denver Diva.
I'm trying to see actually what ones.
For the first time in Survivor, I did not know who this is voted for. Who wrote this down? And who are you voting for?
The thing is, like, yeah, they don't all have clips, but I could try to queue them up for the ones that do. That would be pretty cool.
They don't all have clips.
Yeah, there's some like missing. I don't know if it's from copyright or what, or maybe
Mm.
some of them are like you've seen some where there are a ton of them together. I don't know if they have all that. Also, though, it's like I don't know if you would get copywritten for that though too. That's the problem. So the
Yeah,
reason that I
maybe.
put all the Survivor episodes in a separate thing is because
Mm.
like one time I accidentally put it up and it just instantly blocked it. So I don't know if the same would be true for short clips. That would be cool though. Otherwise, so yeah. So our memory is not perfect on the earlier season sometimes. So this both serves as a refresher for that, as
Hmm.
well as you know, um, thinking about some moments that, in particular, Mario Lanza, they stood out to him at least. So,
Hmm.
um,
And
yeah.
they're fun.
So
They're always a good
yeah,
time.
I went back and checked where we were at because we haven't done one since May 2023. So
Mm.
we were up.
Wow, going on 2 years since we've done this.
We
That's
went up to
crazy.
60, number 60. So now we're going from 59 down to 50. All right. So that'll be 10 for this episode.
Mm.
And all right, let's cue it up and we'll just read it and we'll see. Maybe it'll conjure memories or
One can only hope.
theoretically I should remember these better.
Yeah,
But
because you've
Alex has
watched the
only seen
seasons
them
more.
once, so
Yeah.
I'll give him some
Well, my
grace.
parents when my parents were rewatching when they were on when I would go over and they were on earlier seasons that we'd watched, I'd watch some of those with them. But it was really only like some of Amazon and some of Borneo was like all I really watched with them.
Do you know,
So
did they keep going or they just like finish the whole show now or did they stop and
they
quit?
they got like crazy far. They said they
Mm-hmm.
stopped eventually. They didn't get I don't think they caught up all the way. Um I but they got pretty far. They get into like the 20s or 30s. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's open it up here.
59, a tribute to James, Palau episode 7.
You remember
James
James
James Miller icon. I kind of do.
from
Yeah.
Palau?
Yeah. This was just a short, quick 1 second clip during episode 7 of Palau, but it never fails to make me laugh. It's also sort of cute. Redneck James Miller, he of the "you ain't lying" and "come on" catchphrases, has been voted out of Oolong at the end of episode 6. Because I honestly believe that James Miller had the potential to be one of the most interesting Survivor characters of all time. Oh, sorry, I skipped. I
It
just
was like, what
completely
the
skipped
heck?
a sentence. What the heck? And it was a great loss to the show too, because I honestly believe that James Miller had the potential to be one of the most interesting Survivor characters of all time. It's you know, but alas, James left the game in the 6th episode, and that was that. We would never get to hear his distinctive catchphrases again, or so we thought. Because in the very next episode, Oolong and Karora meet up for a head-to-head challenge. And this is where Jeff informed the Karoras that James had been the latest player voted out of the game. This was standard Probst protocol. He always told the other tribe who had been the person voted out the night before. Jeff had been doing this since the very first season. But Jeff was probably not expecting what would happen when Karora heard that their favorite, James, was no longer a player in this game. Because what followed was a quickie and cute tribute, quote-unquote, to James from his friends over on Karora. James Miller became the first player in Survivor history to receive an impromptu tribute from players on the other tribe. Check it out. Karora waits to see who Oolong voted off. And here we have the new Oolong tribe. James voted off at the last tribal council. Oolong enters the picture. By law, Stephanie must lead the way. Ian gasps when he sees the missing player. He comments out loud, "James!" Ian follows with a quickie impression. In a perfect James Miller intonation, he says, "You ain't lying." Kobe follows with a spot-on perfect, "Come on!" Everybody on Karora starts giggling. Even Oolong seems to be amused. It is possible that the Karoras were just making fun of James. I don't know. But to me, it seemed more like a tribute to a guy who always made him laugh. I think the Karoras really missed James when he wasn't around to spout out those distinctive catchphrases. After all, I don't see how you could possibly be around James for 2 weeks and not get a kick out of the way he talks. So anyway, Karora's off-the-cuff tribute to the fallen James Miller ranks as the number 59 moment on the Funny 115. It's not the biggest laugh in the world. It's probably the shortest moment on the entire list. But I guarantee you can't hear this little tribute without it bringing a little smile to your face. Ian and Kobe's impressions are absolutely perfect. And even though it's quick, it's awfully cute. And there he is. I remember this this shot for like the confessions.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite the lounging on a tree. I'll tell you how it's gonna happen. Mario's going to take my tribute, and he's going to put it in the top 10. It's my time now, and I know a few things about this list. Ain't no way Mario drops my tribute out of the top 50. Hell no.
Oh, yeah, so that was another Funny 115 thing, I think, was how James had made all these predictions that were all wrong.
Yeah, they were all completely wrong. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah.
I remember that.
All right. Yeah, James, I remember he was like, he was your favorite of the pre-merge. I mean, the pre-merge doesn't have many very interesting people, so he was the standout there at least.
Yeah, for sure.
And number 58, 260 pounds of hatch.
Oh, jeez.
All-Stars, multiple episodes. This isn't one moment so much as it is a running joke, but it's absolutely one of the funniest subplots in Survivor All-Stars, and that's actually saying something, because All-Stars is a surprisingly funny season, if nothing else. The fact that All-Stars has jokes based on past seasons is something that really makes it stand out on a comedic level. And nowhere is it more evident than with the storyline of Richard Hatch. Do you remember Richard Hatch?
There he is. He's yeah, I guess I kind of remember him. I don't know. He had some potential. There he is in all his glory, right? Well, not all his glory. He's clothed in this image.
Of course you do. On the internet and among casual Survivor fans, he's more or less considered a Survivor god. He's the grandfather of the game. He pretty much invented the game, and no one is more respected in terms of Survivor strategy. Among the casual Survivor fan, Richard Hatch is viewed with either reverential admiration or sneering derision. You either like him or you hate him, but one thing that remains constant is that people respect him. Even if you don't like Richard, you will probably begrudgingly admit that he was a fantastic Survivor player. And that's what makes All-Stars so funny. Why was All-Stars so funny? Well, because it showcased the incredible difference between the way Survivor fans view Richard and the way Survivor alumni view Richard. Because the two viewpoints could not possibly be further apart. By the way, in case you missed All-Stars, here's a quick recap of how the two opinions of Richard tend to break down. Survivor fans, Richard is the admittedly unlikable genius who invented Survivor. Survivor alumni, Richard is a fat guy with a little dick.
Oh, no.
I know that's sort of a blunt analysis, but come on, that is the only way they portrayed Richard in All-Stars. Every comment made about him throughout the course of the season was either, A, he's a big blustery blowhard, B, we're going to take his ass down when we get the chance, C, he's fat, or D, he's hung like a squirrel. Richard's editing in All-Stars was so comical and so negative that if it had been anybody but Richard, I would have felt bad for the guy. Anybody else in this moment would not be included on the list, but since Richard was such a fantastic sport about coming back for All-Stars, and because he seems to have a wonderful sense of humor about himself in general, I have to say that the jokes about Richard always cracked me up. Every time one of the Mogos made a joke about his body, it was one of the highlights of the episode. especially when Colby did it. Colby was the unquestioned king of the Hatch joke, and it's why the first half of All Stars is so much more fun than the second half. I think you can trace it all back to the repeated jokes that Richard Hatch is a large human being. I can't run down every Hatch joke during All Stars. There were a lot, but I will try to point out my favorites, because it's always fun to see how other survivors viewed Richard, particularly because it's so jarringly different from the way Survivor fans tend to view him. So here we go. Sit back and enjoy.
Already an interesting take, because him saying that All Stars, the beginning of All Stars, is more entertaining.
It definitely is.
I guess, yeah, no, it is in terms of it is a mess. So I guess that does, in essence, kind of make it more.
Well, all the people that we like are there.
Yeah, and all the people we like are there. Yeah, that's true.
Episode 1, Sheehan is rendered speechless the first time she sees Richard walking around naked. Below, her shocked double take and quick aversion of her eyes always makes me laugh. Episode 1, Richard pulls off his pants right before the first immunity challenge, and Jenna Maraska, standing right behind him, slumps her shoulders in anguished disgust. This is one of my favorite visual moments in All Stars. You can actually feel her pain just by looking at her body language. Check it out. Episode 2, Colby says that the worst thing about Richard walking around naked is the fact that everybody's actually getting comfortable with it. That's the spooky part.
I remember that line. That's really funny.
Episode 2, Lex tells us that the image of a naked, stumbling Richard Hatch is hilarious. Episode 3, Sheehan tells us that Richard is very impressive in the water, but he's not so impressive down below.
I love I love her in the background.
Mm-hmm.
That's so good.
Episode 3, Colby and Lex are building a new shelter, and Lex explains how the planks have to be extra strong to support a 250 shark-catching gay fisherman. Will Hatch actually fit up there? Episode 3, here's a great exchange of dialogue. Colby, when you have Richard Hatch in your team, there's a lot of love. Lex, too much love. Episode 3, Kathy's talking about the new shelter, and she says, I can't tell you if I like the front or the back better. And the editors decided to superimpose this quote over a shot of naked Richard scratching himself. Nicely done, editors, nicely done. I definitely remember that one.
I do too. Oh my goodness.
Episode 4, naked Richard catches 2 eels in the ocean, holds them up for all to see. Lex, of course, teases him by yelling out, what's the one in the middle, Hatch? Is that your bait?
Oh man, there's a lot more zingers in here than I remember. This is awesome.
Episode 5, in my opinion, here is the funniest quote ever said about Richard Hatch. The Mogo Mogos have to build a raft for a reward challenge, and Colby tells us about one of the structural requirements. He says, not only does this raft have to carry Lex and Kathy and I and a normal human being, but it's got to carry 260 pounds of Hatch.
260 pounds of Hatch.
Ha ha ha, great quote. Wow, typing out ha 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 is crazy.
Yeah.
That's in my top 20 quotes ever said on Survivor. In my opinion, it's even better than Colby's Hershey bar. Well, there's 260 pounds of Hatch.
Right there it is, right there.
So anyway, that's how the other survivors view Richard Hatch. To them, he's just a fat, blustery guy with a little sausage. They won't even call him by name. They just repeatedly refer to him as Hatch, which for some reason always cracks me up. Like I said, I wouldn't have included this moment if it was making fun of anybody but Richard Hatch. Anybody else, and it would have seemed mean. But since Richard loves being over the top and memorable, I have to think he probably enjoyed the jokes as much as we did. And I have to think that if he's reading the internet in prison, he'll be laughing his ass off if he reads 2115.
Classic timeline right there.
So anyway, thanks Richard for being a good sport, and thanks for walking around naked in front of your tribes mates. You almost single-handedly salvaged the All-Star season. That's an interesting take on Richard Hatch for All-Stars.
That is for All-Stars. Well, you can say that, but I'm noticing there's one particular naked moment that did not make it on here.
Didn't salvage it entirely,
because it's not really very funny.
Well, we haven't got through all the top 50. Who knows?
It's true. It could show up. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yes, of course I would be remiss if I didn't mention the 2 most famous Richard is fat jokes from Borneo. They didn't make this list on their own, but I know a lot of people will be happy to see me give them a shout out. So here you go. Rich is fat, but he's good. That's Rudy.
I think that's my favorite. Well, the 250 pounds of Hatch is good too, but that's amazing. He's fat, but he's good.
Colleen says, go home and go get your liposuction and go catch more fish because you're bugging me.
I remember that one. Wow. I actually remember that one. Yeah. Wow. Really? Harsh.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Colby was good. Colby's good with the confessionals.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, for sure. He lived it up in those.
Mm-hmm. All right, number
Yeah.
57.
260 pounds a hatch. 57, the Roger Sexton farewell episode.
Okay.
Also known as What Type of Prune
Oh,
Is
great.
This?
Here we go. Is this
Oh boy.
Kung Fu Chop? Is this going to be in
Kung
here?
Fu Chop Roger, yeah. This isn't a moment per se, it is actually an entire episode. It's the Roger Sexton boot episode from Amazon. And to this day, I've never seen an episode quite like it. Why? Well, because the sole purpose of Amazon Episode 7 was to get you to hate the Napoleonic leader of Tambaki, Roger Sexton. You were supposed to hate him from the very first minute, you were supposed to hate him throughout the entire episode, and you were supposed to laugh with glee every time the other players slammed him behind his back, which was quite often. The entire episode could be best described as, "Ha ha! Roger sucks!" And to make the matters worse, the editors didn't even try to hide the fact that Robert would be going home at the end of the episode. They flat out told us all along that Roger was going home. There wasn't the slightest attempt to misdirect the audience, and it was totally unlike any Survivor episode we had ever seen before, or have ever seen since. In fact, I will come right out and say that Amazon Episode 7 remains the most slanted and most biased episode the show has ever had. It was the most cruel, it was the most mean-spirited, it contained the most gratuitous put-downs, and I have to say that no player has ever been ripped a new one by the editors as badly as Roger Sexton. And I don't care how unpopular the guy was with the other players, all in all, I have to say that his boot episode was very, very fair, very, very unfair all around. No one deserved to get roasted that badly on their way out, not even Roger.
Wow, so he's just a Roger defender all around.
Roger Defender. He's a prune enthusiast. Well, I mean, when you're dogpiling on one guy, I don't know. That does get kind of rough if you just in the way he's framed it, it's like it is still kind of rough, even if he is kind of an asshole. But however, that being said, this is also one of the funniest episodes I've ever seen in my life. I know, I'm a hypocrite. Because basically I'm now negating everything I just said, but damn it, this was a funny episode. I know Roger probably didn't think so, especially when he saw it air on TV for the first time, but you have to admit it was funny watching the sheer amount of joy the other players got from a Roger Sexton blindsiding. I've honestly never seen an entire cast that happy to see somebody go. And I don't know if it was editing or if the guy really was that unlikable, but after a while you more or less started to laugh along with the rest of the cast. There was so much giddiness going around that it was practically impossible not to get caught up in it. In case you don't remember the Roger Gets Blindsided episode, here are some of the highlights. Sorry, I don't have a lot of screen caps. This is the only episode I don't have on DVD from the first 8 seasons of Survivor. So, of course, it's the one episode that ends up making the list on its own. Figures. The Roger Sexton Boot episode. Here we go. 1. Roger is the bossy, diminutive, he's like 5'5"-ish, leader of Tambaki. And it's safe to say he is not particularly well liked. He is openly and blatantly biased against the women, and he has every intention of reuniting the men at the merge to band together and march their way to the end. But little does he know that Rob's sister Nino has other plans in mind. Rob isn't about to team back up with Roger, not in a million years. And Roger is about to find out this information the hard way, when Treemail announces that it's time for the two tribes to merge. Rob gleefully planning Roger's demise. Here he is. 2. Here's a pre-merge quote from Rob. He is planning to band with the women and finally get the numbers against the supremely arrogant Roger. I just want to say, Roger, shut up. Stop talking, Roger. That's going to be a highlight of my game. 3. Here's a pre-merge quote from Alex. He's also not much of a Roger fan. The problem with Roger is that he's an ass. He's loud, he's obnoxious, he's bossy, he thinks he knows everything. And there he is, talking about why he hates Roger.
He's an ass.
He's an ass. 4. Dina, the alpha female, and Roger butt heads over construction of the new shelter. Rob sees this and is immediately giddy with anticipation. He knows how badly Dina will want to take the guy out now. 5. Another Rob quote. Roger loves to see himself talk. Roger thinks that women are stupid. 6. Yet another Rob quote, talking about how stupid Roger is to ignore the females. Some people are building a shelter. Some people are building alliances. We'll see if the people building the shelter will be around to use it for more than a few days. 7. Heidi pleads with Dina. Please let Roger go first, please. 8. Here's a quote from Dina, who is rightfully upset with her new tribe mate. Roger will never let a woman win if he's on the jury, so screw him. Dina joins the bash fest. Here we go.
That's right.
9. And now we see the editors start to bury Roger in an early grave. Here's the final example of building him up to take a great fall. Oh, the first. What did I say? Final?
Mm-hmm.
No, the first example of building him up to take a great fall is a quote from Roger. The men outnumber the women, and it just seems too easy. Something's probably going to happen here. We'll see.
We'll see. I guess. Yeah.
I guess we'll see. 10, another Alex quote. Roger was an ass today, so he's going first. Really on him being an ass. 11, more from Rob. He's talking about how Roger fell asleep during the celebration feast. One guy fell asleep snoring. And it happens to be the same guy everybody wants to vote off. Rob laughs gleefully. 12, more from Rob. He really doesn't like Roger, does he? Roger has no sense of self-awareness, so he can't determine that people don't like him. Nobody likes him. There's Dina wins immunity. Uh-oh, Roger's in trouble now. 13, Rob slams Roger some more after Roger fails to win immunity at the Perch Challenge. I said that the only way Roger is going to win immunity is if it's a contest of Name That Perry Como song. Or perhaps, what type of prune is this? Or some other thing that only an old man like Roger would be able to determine. Well, that's an incredible quote. Holy smokes, I forgot about that one. Rob talking about Roger's shortcomings prior to the big vote. 14, Alex slams Roger after Roger loses immunity. The game worked out better than expected. We had the best time out there. Naked chicks? Shia. Pizza? Shia. Roger was stupid enough to jump off and get himself nothing. Shia. He has no idea that he's going home tonight. It's going to be a beautiful day in the Amazon. Oh yeah, this was that's right. The Perch Challenge was like Jeff like holds up something and then they just like start taking their clothes off and he's like, and he never even said the like, you can do that and I'll give you this. They just start doing it. Anyway. 15, the editors let Roger dig himself a deeper grave. Here's another Roger quote. Everything seems to be falling into place, and I'm sitting here saying, it's too good to be true. Is it too good to be true? 16, Dina taunts Roger behind his back just before tribal council. Roger is planning all these interesting activities for later in the evening, but Roger isn't going to be here. 17, and now the coup de grace. Rob goes for the jugular for Roger at tribal council. This is arguably one of the most memorable and funny voting comments in Survivor history. And it all happens when Rob does his impression of DJ Casey Kasem. Here comes tonight's long-distance dedication. It goes out to Rob from New York. He writes, Dear Casey, there's an old man in my life that's about to leave. Could you please play something appropriate for me? Oh, Rob, here's a request. Na, 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 na. Na, 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 na. Hey, hey, hey. Goodbye. There it is, the fateful vote. And blindsided. So anyway, that was that. Roger was blindsided. He never saw it coming, and to this day it remains the weirdest episode of Survivor I've ever seen. There was no misdirection. There was no fake editing. Hell, they never even gave us an alternate boot who might have gone home instead of Roger. We knew Roger was gone from the first minute of the episode. So basically, the entire episode just turned into a 60-minute bash fest instead. Like I said, if I was Roger watching this episode at home with my family, I would have been mortified. I really don't think CBS should have treated that guy that way. Especially since he didn't seem all that bad in the first place. Well, I don't know about that. I'm not a big Roger fan over here. But as a Survivor fan...
Rest in peace, though, Roger. Shout out.
Yeah, shout out. Rest in peace. But as a Survivor fan, I have to say I laughed at this episode more than just about any other episode overall. Other than the Vanuatu finale. The Roger Sexton boot episode was mean, it was cruel, yet the players were so giddy in their united hatred for the guy that after a while I just had to laugh along and join them. He probably didn't feel good about it afterwards, but when that many players unite to hate the same person, who knows? Maybe he really did get his just desserts in the end. In any case, the episode was so quirky and so distinct that it easily slides into the 57 spot on my countdown. Heck, it would have made the list just for Sesternino quotes alone. I think the what type of prune is this confessional may be my single favorite Survivor confessional of all time. Rob Sesternino at his peak was pure comedy gold, I tell you. That kid was an absolute Survivor legend. Well, he may be gold, but I'm Brian and I'm platinum. What the fuck? Get off my list, Brian. How'd you even get in here? Anyway, security! Security!
I don't get it. What? This is Brian from Guatemala. He's just here.
He's just here? I'm not sure I get it.
I'm platinum.
I don't know if I understand. P.S. Another quirky aspect of this episode was the introduction of the famous double confessional. You see, this is the first episode to feature two people talking in the same interview. It happened with Alex and Matt early in episode 7, and then followed with the Heidi Jenna twosome right before Tribal Council. I remember this. I actually do remember this. Like I said, this episode was just weirdly edited all around. I have no idea what drug the editors were on that week, because this episode just doesn't fit with any of the other ones. Postscript. And why do the producers hate Roger so badly anyway? Did he sleep with Burnett's daughter or something? Was Roger Sexton chill one? Is he actually a Sith Lord? I sense a conspiracy here. Does anybody else have any of the theories? Postscript. By the way, Roger's Bash Fest didn't even end with the 7th episode. You would think 60 minutes of humiliation would have been enough, but when the editors showed Rob and Dina hanging his underwear in a tree at the start of the 8th episode, but then the editors showed Rob and Dina hanging his underwear in a tree at the start of the 8th episode. So when does the humiliation end, CBS? Tell me, when does the humiliation end?
Wow. Okay.
I forgot they did that. Wow, that's brutal.
Do I have any other theories? The theory is that like everybody on the island expressed how much they hate Rogers. So what do you want to do with it? What do you? He gave them quotes that set him up for his own demise. I mean, like that's like some of the most satisfying Survivor moments in Survivor episodes ever. Are the ones where you get your just desserts on these people who are like cocky or make certain comments, and then meanwhile their demise is in the works. You know,
right?
It's just
right. Yeah, I mean, I think you have kind of just like a buildup of gold here, and yeah, then they just unleashed it. They unleashed it all upon him.
It's one of those unique instances where it pays to, rather than try to misdirect, just go all in on the. This is demise happening before our eyes, right here.
Good stuff.
But as always, you can watch our reactions to most of these.
Yeah.
As well. We didn't react to the first 4 seasons, but after that, we reacted to pretty much every episode of Survivor since. So you can actually watch us. Probably a good amount of these episodes, if they're funny, or these moments, if they're funny, probably made their way into the edit of our reaction.
Probably did, yeah. This would have been a somewhat. This would have been during the scuff of when I was still living at my folks' place. So,
and we lost a couple episodes in like Amazon and All Stars, and that's about it. Number 56. I don't know. Hell yeah.
Oh yeah, we talk about this all the time. We mentioned this with each other all the time.
I'm assuming it's the same. I don't know, right?
Yeah, it's got to be.
I don't know.
I don't know.
From Borneo episode 12. This is probably one of the most famous scenes in Survivor history. It was funny at the time, and it's still funny today, and it stands up as well as just about any of the Pantheon moments from Borneo. Rudy forgetting the answers to the immunity challenge is a moment that will live on in Survivor history. And just why is it so funny? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's the second to last episode. Yeah, here we are. Yep.
Yep.
This is the second to last episode of Survivor Borneo, and the producers have come up with a creative idea for a challenge. They've decided to take the biggest movie of the past year, The Blair Witch Project, and turn it into a Survivor-style spoof. Their bright idea will be called the Survivor Witch Project. If you didn't see it, this challenge involved players racing through the forest to find trivia questions, then recording themselves with a handheld camera saying the right answers. The first person to return with footage of themselves answering all 5 questions would win immunity. Oh, and like the Blair Witch Project, all 5 players would end up being murdered in the corner of a basement at the end. Sadly, the murders themselves were deemed too graphic to be shown on TV, so they wound up being cut from the final episode. True story.
Wow. Huh.
The Rattanas reading tree mail about the Survivor Witch Project Immunity Challenge. Rudy looks uninterested in the background. Probst's cheesy video tree mail that he probably wishes he never filmed.
That is so scuffed. I love it.
The crux of this challenge involved Chef Probst sitting down with the players beforehand and telling them a Malaysian ghost story. This was supposed to tie in with the Blair Witch Project storyline, but in reality, it was just Jeff telling them a bunch of Borneo folktales. He told them why you weren't supposed to say your name in the forest, why you weren't supposed to taunt a snake, etc. Basically, he was giving them the answers to the questions they would be answering later during the challenge. Jeff tells them Borneo folktales.
There he is.
The only problem was that Rudy just wasn't paying attention. Jeff was sitting there telling them Malaysian folktales, and Rudy just didn't give a rat's ass. His mind was off wandering somewhere. Maybe he was thinking about the Gish sisters. Who knows? And when Jeff told the players that they should have paid attention to what he just told them, Rudy was now more or less screwed. He had no idea what Jeff had been yammering on about. Rudy had probably been thinking about what he was going to cook for dinner. Rudy trying his best to appear interested. Side note, it was never been proven that what the real story was behind this moment. Was Rudy not paying attention? Did Rudy just not care? Or was Rudy just an old man with memory retention problems? I prefer to think he just wasn't paying attention because it makes it a funnier story. If it was caused by the fact that he was just old, then it becomes a lot sadder. So we will stick with the first explanation for purposes of this write-up.
Oh.
Rudy gets his handheld camera. Uh-oh, what the fuck is a handheld camera? So anyway, the challenge stats and Rudy... the challenge stats! And Rudy is up shit creek without a paddle. He has no idea what the answers are to the questions. Honestly, he probably doesn't even care. So he just runs around in the jungle. He reads each trivia question off the back of a mask, and he answers repeatedly with one of the most famous Rudy quotes of them all.
It's so good.
What will the spirits do when they hear the conch shell? I don't know. I love it too. The way it's filmed, so good.
Like that. It's filmed like that. It's so great.
It's funny the first time it happens because it's clear that Rudy is the only player who wasn't paying attention. All the other players are finding this challenge quite easy. They all are.
Yeah, they all this cursed.
The other players are flying through the answers without a problem in the world. And then when we realize that Rudy isn't going to get any of the questions right, he's going to, I don't know, his way through all 5 answers. And that's exactly what happens. Rudy doesn't get a single one of the questions right. It's just, I don't know. After I don't know. After I don't know. Not surprisingly, Rudy doesn't win immunity at the end of the episode. Kelly wins immunity, and Dr. Sean ends up being voted out. But Rudy's repeated mantra of I don't know became one of the most repeated catchphrases on the message boards, as well as one of the most beloved moments among the worldwide cult of Rudy. You see, Rudy Bosch was already the most famous castaway in Borneo by this point, but the addition of I don't know to his legacy helped cement his status as a survivor legend for years to come. And to think it was all because he just wasn't paying attention when Jeff was telling them a story. P.S. Not only was this challenge memorable because of Rudy, it's also one of the stupidest ideas I've ever seen on Survivor. Whose bright idea was it to reference a movie that nobody would care about a year later? Who were the ad wizards who came up with that one? Is there any faster way to date your TV series and ensure that it would always look stupid in syndication? I've always believed that if the producers could change one thing about the first season, it would be to remove this challenge and replace it with something more traditional. Blair Witch Project tie-in my ass. Now that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I don't think they didn't forget about Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
Really didn't.
No.
VPS, I assume this was the last time the producers would whore out their show to a movie tie-in. I really did, but then the Survivor producers set a new low during Exile Island when Jeff deliberately plugged an Adam Sandler movie during the reunion show. That was ridiculous. Come on, CBS, you're better than that. Don't let it happen again. I don't remember that plug either.
Would have been Click?
PPPS. Spoiler, the producers would do it again.
Oh, they did do it again. They did. Apparently they did it again. They've done it again.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember when this was written. It was obviously after the first 12 seasons or so. But so it already had been more than a year since Blair Witch Projects. I guess Blair Witch Project is an immediate future.
Yeah, no, Blair Witch Project had like it had its time in the spotlight for like the year or two after it came out. It kind of like went by the wayside. People kind of stopped talking about it. But like I think with the advent of more the found footage craze that happened in like the early 2010s, I think people started referring to it and talking about it again a little bit more. And then I think just the fact that the internet has only ballooned and sprouted off and done all these other things. I think to a certain degree it's still retained some influence in the years since then. But it did kind of have a big, like, no one really talked about it for probably a decade after it came out. But
so now your Funny 115 entry is now dated.
Boom. There you go. happens to us all.
Number 55. Oh, yes.
The Mixer Reward Challenge, Amazon Episode 3 and All Stars Episode 4. The Mixer Reward Challenge?
It's the one where you have to match, like, you have a shell, or do you have a toothpaste, and you just, like, go fish or whatever.
Right! Yeah, fun challenge. All Stars is the season that I criticized the most, because for the most part, I think the producers did almost everything wrong. I didn't like most of the choices they made. I think they ruined what could have been the best season of all time, and I'm usually very vocal when I talk about this. All Stars is simply the only season that I think could be considered a failure. However, that being said, they did do a few things right in All Stars, and I am proud to say that this is one of them. This is the challenge that they absolutely should have brought back, and it warmed my heart to see that the producers actually agreed with me for a change. And I agree too. This is actually maybe one of my favorite challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking, of course, about the famous Mixer Reward Challenge from the Amazon. The one where the players try to guess what is in everyone else's wooden box. To this day, it remains one of my all-time favorite fun Survivor challenges, and that's because the players seem to have so much fun just cracking jokes and making fun of one another. Another reason I like this challenge is because it is so much different than all the rest of the Survivor challenges. It's not a competitive challenge at all. It is not the slightest bit hardcore, and it is most certainly not serious. Instead, it's just a bunch of players standing around and cracking jokes. They flirt, they laugh, they have fun. And the most important thing is that they actually show us their true charisma. You have to remember that every player cast on Survivor possesses an inordinate amount of personal charisma. That is the reason why the producers want to put them on TV, because these people are interesting and fun to watch. And nowhere is this charisma more evident than in the Mixer Challenge, when the players get to let their hair down and actually just goof around. For at least one part of one episode, we actually get to forget strategy and just watch the players interact as themselves. And it is always a lot of fun to watch, especially when Rob's sister Nino is involved. I thought this was a wonderful challenge in the Amazon. I thought it was equally wonderful when they did it in All Stars, and I sincerely wish Survivor would do something like this every season. It always makes for a memorable episode when they use it. So anyway, here are the highlights from the two Mixer challenges they've done on Survivor, Amazon and then All Star. By the way, I call it the Mixer because the challenge was initially used as an excuse to mix the men and women in the Amazon and watch them flirt with one another the first time they actually met. That's right. Jeff explains the Mixer rules. Amazon Mixer highlights. The introduction of a fun, jazzy musical score. They only use this music during this particular challenge, by the way, which is a shame. Dan calling Shauna the cute girl and then walking over to shake her hand. Ah! Joanna humiliates the wee little Roger by lifting a rock too high for him to reach. The poor guy actually has to jump to try and grab it. Well, damn. I forgot about that. Alex tells Jenna that he knows her name because I'm really, really smart and I pay attention. Rob guesses incorrectly what is in Heidi's box, so he jokes to Jeff, shot down by another woman. No, yep. Dina takes Rob's item, and Rob announces the women are picking me clean. Is Jeff having a good time with it? Dan asks Heidi if she has conditioner, but Rob has already taken this item from her earlier in the game, so Dan ends up looking like a big dork. Shauna does the exact same thing to Rob, asking if he has conditioner when he has already given away. Rob says no and then quips, and Heidi doesn't have it either. Jeff teases Rob and asks if his witty banter strategy really works with women. Rob says that surprisingly, no, it doesn't. As Jeannie picks the winning item for the victorious Jabiroos. And the women win reward. Jabiru. Oh yeah, Jabiru. Jabiru. The All-Star Mixer highlights. Boston Rob teases Ethan right off the bat by referring to him as Pretty Boy. Kathy takes an item from Rob C and jokes that she can read his mind. Rob implies that he's calling her a name when he quips, yeah, but can you read it now? That's good. Richard leaves his box open too wide, and Boston Rob sees all his items. So Rich comically tries to hide his box from Rob every time after that. Jenna Lewis leaves her box open too wide, and Ethan teases her about it. Why don't you just leave your box open and turn around, Jenna? That way everybody can see. Sheehan pulls a Dan Liu by asking Alicia for a feather she has already given away. Nice. Always great. Lex retreats away from his podium so no one can see his items, and Rob C jokes, I already know what you have. And Shapira, is it Shapira?
Chapera.
Shapira wins reward. All in all, this is one of my favorite Survivor challenges because the players are flat out having so much fun. We get to see their true personalities emerge for a change. We get to see their natural charisma put itself on display, and we get to see why the casting department wanted to put them on TV so much in the first place. I strongly feel that they should use this challenge every season, because if nothing else, it adds a lot of depth to players we sometimes think of as soulless automatons. I mean, my god, even Richard Hatch had a fun time playing this game, and that isn't something that happens very often. Yeah, there he is. He got a smile. P.S. We missed a great moment for comic hilarity in All Stars when Rudy was voted right before he had a chance to play the mixer game. Man, that would have been hilarious. Can you imagine? It would have been like an SNL episode of Celebrity Jeopardy. Rudy, do you have a feather? I don't know. Now it's my turn. Yes, you get to pick somebody. And I have to guess what's in their box? Yes. How do I know what they have? Well, you don't. So I just guess then? Yes. All right, well, I'm going to ask her, a girl in the blue shirt. You mean Jerry? I don't know. Jerry's the woman in the blue shirt. Okay, then her. What do you want to know, Rudy? She have a shell? You can ask her yourself if you want. You don't have to ask me. All right, do you have a shell? Who's me? He's just pointing. Yeah, you. No, Rudy, I gave you my shell last round. Neither of us has a shell now. Oh, yeah. Well, here's what I do have. Rudy turns his box around and opens it up. Rudy, you're not supposed to show us your box. Well, do you have a shell? No, Rudy. You already asked someone. We have to move on now. To the girl in the blue. Jerry! My name is Jerry! It's always been Jerry. We've been living on the same beach for 10 days now, and you still don't even know my name. Wait, aren't you on my tribe? Yes! Well, do you have a shell? No! That's cute. That's cute. That's fun. I like that.
It's a fun challenge. I'll have to see if I don't know if they have clips of this and stuff. It'll be maybe fun one time if I can get like a compilation of all of them, and that way I can actually put it together on the website separately of us reacting to the moments actually happening.
Yeah, it's a fun that's a fun challenge for sure. I always say like Survivor Auction is another highlight for me, and it's for a lot of similar reasons. The casts tend to have fun and they get to
but this around. One in particular, it mixes the tribes like when they hadn't met yet too.
Exactly. That's what makes it charisma. They get to ooze charisma.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What?
Well, I don't remember
Bubba's
this.
Boner. Dang, if there was a boner, I would have named the episode that Bubba's Boner.
Bubba's Boner. Damn.
You remember Travis? You remember Bubba?
I remember that. I remember Bubba. I do not remember his name was Travis.
Yeah, from Vanuatu.
Yeah.
Poor Bubba. He never really stood a chance, did he? When I first came up with the idea of the Funny 115, Bubba's final day in Yasser was the moment that inspired me. In fact, his exit from Survivor Vanuatu was not only the impetus for this column, I was actually quite certain that it was going to wind up in the top 20. Hell, I actually thought it was going to be in the top 10. That's how ridiculous this moment was. And I knew it was going to be one of the centerpieces of the Funny 115. Is this all going to be about Bubba having a boner at some point? Wow.
Yeah, apparently so.
But alas, when I started actually sorting out the moments for the countdown, I was surprised to find that Bubba's exit wasn't quite as funny as I remembered it. Oh, sure, it was still goofy and completely ridiculous, yet it didn't have the "oh man, that was great" factor that so many other moments on this list did. So sadly, I had to drop Bubba's boner down to number 54. Still wish this moment would have ended up being higher, but there was so much stiff competition at this level, I just couldn't. I bet I couldn't justify moving up any higher than this. But don't worry about him. I think Bubba will be just fine. And if not, well, as he himself famously said during Survivor Vanuatu, he can build a bridge and get over it. Bubba exalts. Oh yeah, in case you don't remember Bubba's exit from Vanuatu, here's what happened. To this day, it remains one of my all-time favorite doofus moves in Survivor history. There he is, Bubba with the Bob Barker shirt.
Yeah, that Bob Barker shirt. That's right. I remember that.
It was episode 5 Vanuatu, and the tribes had just been through the big twist. The genders had been divvied up by Sarge and Scout, and poor Bubba now found himself a minority in the mostly female tribe of Yasser. The Vanuatu tribal swap, Bubba's new tribe, Estrogen City.
Right, there he is with oh, what's his name?
Could be any of them. Rory.
Yeah, it could be any of them. Rory! No, I'm trying to remember Rory. Rory, of course. Happy Rory.
After the twist, Yasser now consisted of Bubba, Rory, there you go, and 5 females. And you know what that meant? That meant that the big man in the Bob Barker shirt was now pretty much screwed. He was a hostage. Because in a season that was gender divided as Vanuatu, Rory and Bubba were now officially living on borrowed time. It was only a matter of time in which one of the two of them would be going home first. And Queen Bee Amy of the Yassers even confirmed this for us. Amy tells us that Rory and Bubba might as well not even get unpacked.
Yeah, Ice Queen Amy. Queen Bee.
Bubba had a plan to get out of this dilemma. The man was a cunning strategist, you see. Oh, sure, he might not have looked the part, what with the bright red hair, the wobbly, off-kilter run, and the faded orange Bob Barker shirt, but Bubba knew how he would save his own skin. All he had to do was wait for the next immunity challenge, because at the challenge, Bubba was going to secretly pass a message to his former tribesmates and tell them they had to throw the challenge. All Bubba had to do was somehow get Chris or Sarge's attention before the challenge. He had to somehow catch their eye, and then everything would be fine. Bubba's ninja-like mastery of stealth would somehow take care of the rest. The big orange ninja.
I remember this now. Yeah, this was.
I remember this. I don't remember the boner though.
Well, they call it. So it's the boner is
phrase?
Like. It's just If someone's got a boner, it's like a stupid move they do. That was a big boner. Yeah. Well, the thing is, is it means something different now. But like, that's the fun. I guess maybe that's the fun of using it in this way. It's just. Yeah, I was like, oh man, that was a boner.
That's
right
an
there.
old time. I've literally never heard that used in any.
Really? Okay, yeah. It is used in a context where it's like a big stupid mistake that you do as a big boner. Oh yeah.
Okay. Right.
Well, I'm adding the big part, but
So the first post-twist immunity challenge came around, and Bubba finally got the chance he was hoping for. The two teams met each other on the sand, and Bubba now had a chance to manipulate the outcome of this game, because there was Chris, and there was Sarge, and there was Chad, and they were all within earshot. So all Bubba had to do now was somehow pass them a message. He had to tell the men of Lopevi to throw him this challenge, and he had to somehow do it stealthily so that the women of Yasser would never catch on. And what method did Bubba employ? What stealth tactics did our master strategist use to communicate with his allies in the opposing tribe? Why, he simply turned and talked to them.
Like audibly, is like
Bubba passes a secret message to Lopevi. Throw the challenge.
So you guys gonna throw this one?
Bubba turned to Chris in full view, in earshot of just about every single person in Vanuatu, and he said, "Chris, remember the merge. Just do what you have to do. Remember the merge." And that was that. Bubba didn't even try to disguise what he was trying to do. He might as well have just held up a sign. Busted.
Yeah.
Of course, Amy saw and heard this entire exchange. Hell, she would have had to have been Helen Keller not to. After all, Bubba had practically been standing right next to her. She simply turned her head and watched Bubba pass a forbidden message, and that meant that somehow, amazingly, the big man's much ballyhooed stealth tactics had failed. He had just been busted by the queen bee herself. He couldn't have done a worse job being sneaky if he had tried. Hell, I actually think I heard Bubba pass this message, and I was sitting in the living room all the way in California. So that was that. Bubba got caught trying to secretly pass the message. Chris and the Lopevis refused to throw the challenge, and you can guess what happened to poor misguided Bubba. His team lost immunity, and he was now up shit creek without the proverbial paddle. Lopevi wins immunity. Jeff informs Yasser they will be going to tribal council. Note Bubba's reaction. Oh, poopy. Now, Amy already didn't want either of the guys around. That much was obvious, and since Bubba had so memorably just slit his own throat, it was a safe bet to say that he wasn't going to be around for very much longer. Amy even confirmed this for us in one of the best confessionals of the season. Do you think Michael Jordan goes out there in the basketball court and tells the other team what plays they are going to run? People will get themselves voted out. You don't even have to do anything. They'll do it for you. Bubba tries to save his own skin by pleading with Amy. Yeah, whatever. And of course, the inevitable ended up happening because later that night, and possibly the least surprising tribal council vote in Survivor history, Bubba was bounced from the tribe by the Yasser women. They unanimously voted to send the big orange man packing. But I do have to give Bubba credit for what he did at tribal council just before he was voted out, because not only did he try to wiggle out of the hole he had created for himself, no matter how futile it was, he actually tried to deny the allegations that he had somehow passed a message. This is my favorite part of the Bubba experience, by the way. Despite the fact that he clearly and audibly passed a message to the Lopevis, and despite the fact that Amy clearly saw and heard him do it, Bubba actually tried to deny that he had done anything when the subject came up at tribal council. When Amy brought up the subject that Bubba had been conspiring with the Lopevis, Bubba got this really shocked and indignant look on his face, as if to say, "Me? Pass a message? What?" And it always cracks me up to watch him try to deny something there was no possible way he could deny. I saw Bubba passing a message to Lopevis. Bubba's reaction, what? The inevitable. Bubba's spirited yet ridiculous denial was like watching a 5-year-old with chocolate smears on his face trying to deny that he'd been in the cookie jar. And that's the image I will always remember when I think about Bubba. I will always remember his scoffing, overacted reaction to Amy's allegations that she had seen him passing a message. Message? Me? Are you crazy? The minute he was cast on the show, Bubba was destined to go down as one of the most colorful characters in the annals of Survivor. And sure, he may not have quite lived up to his potential in the end, but I will always love the way he blatantly dug his own hole on the way out, and then how he actually tried to deny it. Even though it only ranks in at number 54, I'm proud to say that Bubba's last day on Yasser remains one of my all-time favorite Survivor exits. Oh well. P.S. If I had to make a list of the players who got exactly what they deserved on their final day, or players who single-handedly got themselves booted out of the game, it would probably look something like this. Number 1, Michelle from Pearl Islands. Number 2, Bubba from Vanuatu. Number 3, Christy from Amazon. Number 4, Xi'an from Thailand. And number 5, Brianna from Guatemala. Okay, so Michelle, Pearl Islands, is the one. She was supposed to be the decoy. She was supposed to look like she was like bad at doing the drinking in the food challenge, so they would pick her, and she just like downed it like easily. And and then Bubba, we know Christy was the one she was the swing vote, and then got too cute with it, didn't give an answer. Xi'an was conspiring with the others because she thought it was a merge
immediately. Yep.
Brianna from Guatemala, I don't remember. I really don't.
I don't remember that either.
I don't even remember her, if I'm being honest. Must be very early on. That's quite a list, and quite a list of memorable Survivor moments, too. But do you know the one that stands out above all the others? Bubba. Why? Easy, because he's the only one out of the 5 who actually tried to deny that he had done anything wrong. Everybody else on that list fessed up to what they had done and took their medicine like a champ, but not Bubba. And I always loved that about the guy. I loved Bubba's blind denial in the face of obvious proof. In fact, I dare say it was almost Hogaboomian. Wow.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm Gary Hogaboom, but I'm not the famous one. We just look alike. I was like, what is this word? Hogaboomian. Wow.
Yeah, Hogaboomian. Yeah, good old Hogaboom.
All right. Well, Bubba. These are the moments we wouldn't think of, Bubba.
Yeah. Yeah, Bubba. But that was a classic remember the merge. Think of the merge. It's like he said that, so I remember it was like you catch him over the audio on the mic. I remember they subtitle it or something. But yeah, they like obviously like could hear him. He's very
and he did not care about
saying,
Bubba. They let him perish on that trap. All right, let's see, number 53.
53. Chris gets his stories mixed up. We already know this man loves Chris.
Oh yeah.
Remember when I said? Yeah, it was Vanuatu episode 13. Remember when I said the Survivor seasons are much better the second time you watch them? Well, this moment is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. A lot of my favorite moments on the Funny Moon 15 are things that weren't necessarily funny the first time you saw them. Rather, they are moments that get a lot funnier once you knew how the season was going to end. In fact, most of these moments you might not have even noticed the first time around. Moments like these, the ones that are only funny on repeat viewings, are the ones that I like to call retroactively funny.
Yeah.
And they are some of my favorite moments on the entire countdown, even if, at the time, they are only funny and or ironic to the editors. A good example of a retroactively funny moment is John's "I guarantee Sandra's not the winner" confessional at the start of Pearl Islands. It's a quote you might not have even remembered the first time you watched Pearl Islands, but I can guarantee you that it stands out during the second viewing. And there are moments like that all the time in Survivor. The editors love to use foreshadowing. The editors love to tip off how the season is going to end. And I have to imagine they are laughing their asses off when they put those scenes in the actual episode. Because if you can recognize a foreshadowing scene for what it is, if you can spot a retroactively funny moment the second time you go back and watch the Survivor season, it often becomes one of the funniest moments of the entire season. Case in point, 13th episode of Survivor Vanuatu. Chris Dougherty is in full-blown liar mode at this point. He's just lying through his teeth to just about everyone. He's dumping the most convoluted and elaborate lies to everybody. He's weaving 4 different storylines depending on who he's talking to, and I have no idea how he's able to keep it all straight in his head. Every single person Chris talks to gets a different story about the deal that they have to the final 2. And every single person gets a different scenario about how Chris is going to get them to the final vote. After a while, with so many stories and scenarios floating around, you would think that Chris would accidentally slip up and tell somebody the wrong story, right? Wouldn't the odds be pretty good that Chris might slip up and accidentally tell somebody the wrong thing? Well, in episode 13, we hit the jackpot, because Chris does screw up when he's talking to Eliza. He does it right on camera, too. Chris accidentally tells Eliza the wrong storyline. Eliza catches him on it, and then Chris does the clumsiest recovery possible in an attempt to get her to forget it. In a rare glimpse into the twisted mind of Chris Dougherty, it shows that even he gets confused by his web of lies sometimes. It also happens to be one of my favorite retroactively funny moments in Survivor history. The scene. It's down to the final 5, and Chris has 2 alliances he can ride all the way to the end. He can either go with Julie Eliza, or he can go with Twyla Scout. Chris's ideal plan is to go with Twyla Scout, because they are older and easier to beat in the challenges, but he's keeping Eliza strung along just in case he needs her vote somewhere along the line. So even though Chris has no intention of taking Eliza to the final 2, he definitely doesn't want her to know this just yet. Eliza needs to think that Chris is going to take her all the way to the final 2. So Eliza and Chris are sitting on the beach right before the immunity challenge in episode 13. And they're shooting the breeze about how the rest of the game is probably going to play out. I'm remembering this now. And, well, let's just say that Chris is a little careless in his word choice during this conversation with Eliza, because he accidentally and absentmindedly tells her the storyline that she really isn't supposed to be hearing. It's hilarious. Take a look. Chris, everything's good. We'll just have to see how this immunity challenge goes. And if it falls in the right direction, we'll talk. And do its best for us. Chris then turns to look at her to the final 3. Oh, yeah. Says Eliza. Oh, yeah. She paused for a second, then looks up and corrects him. The final 2. Chris is silent. He doesn't realize he just screwed up. Then realization hits him. He does a mini Chad gape. Chris quickly corrects himself. Well, yeah, he's stammering. I mean, he pauses and then looks at her and nods sincerely. Right. Sorry. I love this moment because it happens so quickly. I love how Chris passed it off like it was just a slip of the tongue. Great moment. Especially if you know what happened in the very next day in the game. Like I said, this moment is only funny if you know how Vanuatu is going to end. And that's why I call it retroactively funny. It's not something you would even notice the first time you watch Vanuatu, but the second time you watch it, it'll crack you up. This scene is the only time that Chris screws up one of his storylines during Vanuatu, and is one of my very favorite oops moments in Survivor history. If you ever go back and rewatch Vanuatu, keep an eye out for it. Mm-hmm. I will certainly do that.
Love it.
That's fun.
Love the Chris
I love
moments.
that. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's fun too. Yeah. And then she just buys it.
I guess so. Yeah.
I don't know how this man is able to do this, but he did it repeatedly. So
that's one of those things. Is like you could just accidentally say something like that, and it'd be an actual accident,
right?
So,
but then you have to
funnier when you know that it's definitely not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
He meant he'll take her to the final 3, and that's it. but not even that. Not even that. They didn't go to the final 3. But
yeah.
Number 52, Peter's holes. Marcus episode 1. Okay, so what we always remember of Peter is that people called him weird. I don't remember the specifics of it. I don't remember Peter's holes, but it must have something to do with why he's so weird. This is the one episode he's in. So this is interesting.
Yeah, I always bring him up. I've been bringing it up for years now with Zach and I. There's probably plenty of episodes where I talk about Peter being weird, because it's just one of my favorite things. Like, it's one of my favorite, you need an excuse to get rid of somebody. Most of the time it's like you're old, you're too slow, you didn't do well in the challenges. In this case, it was you're weird. And I've always found that very funny.
All right. Yes, now we are entering the world of the Survivor icons, because it's finally time to talk about Peter Harkey, the first Boudie from the Marquesas, or as I like to call him, the golf course. Why? Simple, because the man has got a lot of holes. Rim shot. Sorry, for a minute there I turned into Bob Hope. My apologies to anyone reading this who is under 70. Yeah, even more so now. Peter Harkey, holy man. Peter Harkey was a very unique character. I suppose that's a safe and diplomatic thing to say. You see, I actually know Peter fairly well in real life. I used him as a character in one of my Survivor stories, All-Star Survivor Greece, and Peter enjoyed the story so much that he actually helped me write the last couple of episodes. I have talked to him on the phone several times. We've exchanged a bunch of emails throughout the years, and he was even nice enough to pay for postage when I sent him a copy of Greece in the mail. He sent me a $5 check. So I have to say that in real life, Peter seems like a genuinely nice, perfectly normal guy. Sure, he might have a few quirks, but in general, I think that he gets a bad rap from the Survivor community. He really isn't that weird if you actually get to know him. In fact, he's really one of the nicest survivors I've ever met. I'll share a funny story about Peter that he once told me over the phone. He'll help explain some of the reasons he was voted out first in Survivor Marquesas, and is a perfect lead into the number 52 moment on this list. When Peter was cast for the show, the first thing producer Mark Burnett did was pull him aside and make a small prediction. Burnett told him, "You're either going to be voted out first or you're going to win. I don't think there will be any middle ground with you." The producers knew that the rest of the cast would not be able to relate to Peter, and they were genuinely curious as to how well he would interact with the rest of the tribe. Note, these are basically the same fears the producers had when they cast Gabriel Cade, also in Marquesas. They knew that Gabriel was unlike anybody else in the show, and they worried that the audience would have no idea what to make of the guy. That's why they delayed Gabe's casting by 3 seasons. He was almost cast in Borneo. In fact, when Peter was kicked off first in the Marquesas, that was the first thing the production crew told him when he got back to the Loser Lodge. They told him, wait till you meet this guy Gabe on the other tribe. You guys are going to be peas in a pod. So why was Peter so much different than the rest of the tribe? Well, for starters, he was an intensely spiritual man. The guy was very much into yoga, he was very much into mysticism, and he was very much into karma. He could sit there and spend hours talking about some aspect of Hindu purification rituals, and the rest of the tribe would have no idea what the hell he was talking about. So it was safe to say he was labeled an oddball from the very first minute of the game. The rest of the Mara'amus had no idea what to make of the guy. They had never met anybody like him before in their lives, and he was probably marked for dismissal before the tribe even went to bed the first night. In other words, it went exactly like the producers had predicted it would happen. I believe Peter tried his best to fit in. He had no idea how to relate to these people, but I believe he did give it the old college try. After all, remember his amusing chat with Sean in the life raft on day 2? When he asked Sean to teach him some Harlem stuff that he could take back home? He's learning Harlem stuff. Oh my goodness.
Whatever that means.
Or what about Peter's Tonto-like hero support when he assisted Rob in trying to catch a rooster on day 1? This was really the best that Peter could do to try and fit in. The strange behavior of these humans he lived with really seemed to confuse and befuddle him. Peter trying to assist Rob. But the conversation that Peter is being best remembered for, and the reason he makes a countdown at number 52, was his chat with the Mara'amus about holes on day 3. That's right, holes. If you saw the episode, you know the exact conversation I'm talking about. It was the morning of day 2, and the Mara'amus, not surprisingly, were taking a break. They were all sitting around doing nothing. Chillin', according to Harlem Tuck.
Wow.
And Peter took it upon himself to start talking about yoga, and today's topic of conversation was about holes. Peter explained to the rest of the tribe that one of the aspects of his particular style of yoga, being holy, was that you were supposed to have control over the 7 different holes in your body. And we were talking orifices here. Peter politely explained to the tribe how he tried to achieve mastery in life over his eyes, his ears, his mouth, his pee-pee, and his pooper. Above, 2 of the only holes I can legally show pictures of. Otherwise, this would be a pay site. The minute Peter started talking about his holes, that was the point where the rest of the tribe politely excused themselves. Peter having mastery over his chocolate highways? Sorry, but no thanks. Back to work, guys, quickly. Rob reacting to Peter's conversation about holes. Peter trying to apologize since he has now creeped everyone out. Sean started. I'm just chilling here. So anyway, that conversation pretty much summed up the Peter Harkey experience. He never really fit in with his tribe. He was voted out of Mara'amu at the end of the first episode, and it was exactly what the producers had predicted would happen. Plus, it ensured that the Peter Harkey would forever be known in Survivor annals as the guy who talked about his holes. In other words, Harlem stuff equals yes, yoga stuff equals hell no. Side note, Peter's holes conversation is famous for 2 reasons. First, because it was just plain weird. Anybody who saw it is likely never to forget it. But the second reason this moment is famous is because it led to a funny and famous confessional from Rob Mariano. See below. So he looks like a normal guy, but he's going on and on about being holy, and I'm thinking he's talking about spiritualness, but he's talking about actual holes in your body. I mean, he's a Fruit Loop.
Yeah.
I always love this confessional. First off, it's just funny. Bustin' Rob at the start of the game was awfully likable and charming. He was basically just a smart-ass little kid. But the second and most important reason why I liked this confessional was that Rob actually seemed bashful about saying something mean. I mean, just look at that smile. Rob is almost embarrassed that he's slamming somebody behind their back, and it's not even that bad an insult either. Calling somebody a Fruit Loop is a far cry from some of Rob's mudslinging later in the season, and especially some of the stuff he said about people in All-Stars. It's like he's a whole different person here. Can you imagine Boston Rob nowadays being shy about calling somebody a Fruit Loop? Fat chance. Rob Mariano was my favorite Survivor player ever at the end of the Marquesas season. I thought he was so charming and so funny, and I couldn't believe how much he had changed by the time we got to All-Stars. It was almost as if he had morphed into an entirely different person. And I've always thought that it happened the minute he realized he was someone famous. The minute Rob thought of himself as a star was the minute he decided he always had to be the villain. And it's why I couldn't stand the guy in All-Stars.
Okay, that's a take.
By the way, Christy, what did you think of Peter's comments about his holes? It was creepy, just creepy. Come on.
Yeah, I don't remember what she said that about. So I'm trying to remember what she was talking.
Creepy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably Matt. Probably Matt.
Probably Matt. Yeah.
Matthew, that is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Matthew.
So you couldn't stand Robin All Stars. Right?
No, interesting. Interesting. Because I thought like some of the, it's interesting because it's like he was sort of he was kind of trying to be a little bit of a villain here too. Like that was that was the goal. That was the attempt to be. He just was way more successful in All Stars.
Yeah. Right. Straight out of The Godfather. That was in Marquesas, you know?
Yeah, it was.
Ruled
Yeah.
by fear. Straight out of The
Ruled by fear.
Godfather.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Number 51.
51. Rocks! Australia, episode 1.
I'm not going to remember this. I remember
No.
Deb and how she, like, married her, like, stepson or something.
Yeah, it was some, yeah, which is why they got in the papers, and it has. And she was like, "It's been very difficult for me. They're saying all sorts of things about me." It's like, well, you did marry your stepson, and that's kind of weird. So
I love these shots though.
Yeah.
In the old seasons, they would do this like in front of their workplace, like in uniform.
Right. I know. I'm going to hell for including this moment on the list. And after all, the number one rule in Survivor writing is that you aren't allowed to make fun of Deb Eaton. I'm sorry that's just the way it works. So I know I'm risking some sort of biblical wrath by putting this moment at 51. Hell, I'm probably pissing off God just by even thinking about it. But you know what? Screw it. Deb's quote about rocks is funny, and God can take it up with me in the afterlife if he wants. If I'm lucky, maybe I can even pull off a Chris Daugherty like jury performance and somehow lie my way out of trouble. It's unlikely, but these are the risks I'm willing to take for you people. I hope you somehow appreciate it. Anyway,
I don't remember this at all.
Deb Eaton, lover of rocks. Australia's Deb Eaton is known specifically for two things. First, she is the only Survivor contestant to actually hang herself after she was voted off. But aside from that, Deb is best known.
What?
What? Did that actually?
Wait, I'm trying to think. What is that? A reference to something? I don't think she did. Let me see.
I don't think she did. Maybe she attempted it and it was a failure. That's a possibility.
She's still alive. There's like stories where she like was interviewed about how it's hard for her after the season stuff. I don't know if.
Yeah.
But I don't. Is it metaphorical? Can you metaphorically hang yourself after? Is it like?
I don't know.
Oh, is it like?
I'm sure.
Because of the stuff in the press, like she hung herself. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on there. I was like, I don't remember that happening. But aside from that, Deb is best known for a very distinct quote she uttered during the Australia premiere. It was one of the most often quoted phrases during the Australia season, and it's totally not nice to be including it on this countdown, but like I said, to hell with sensitivity and good taste. There's no way that Deb's rocks quote is going to be left off this list. There are some things that I just cannot do. Here's the actual moment in all its ridiculous glory. It's day one, and the Kucha tribe has just finished a murderous trek across the Australian wilderness. They finally reached their campsite. They're ready to get this game started, and that means it's time to start building their shelter. Then the question comes up. Where should the shelter be built? How are they going to construct it? And most importantly, what materials are they going to use? This is where Deb enters the picture. Deb Eaton, the gruff and somewhat antisocial prison guard who will eventually be the first boot of the game, steps forward to deliver one of the most iconic quotes in Survivor history. Enjoy. We can have rocks here, too. We can build a pretty decent shelter using just rocks!
Okay. Kind of remember.
And scene. My wife and I have always loved those quotes, but we had discussed recently why we both thought it was so funny. Was it because Deb thinks that she can actually build a shelter using rocks? Or is it in the way she shouts it? Or is it just some magical combination of the two? Is it perhaps her accent? Or maybe it's the way the editors framed the shot. After all we see is a close-up of her screaming face as she bellows across the camp about rocks! Or maybe it's the image of Deb constructing her own little personal Stonehenge and expecting it to keep the cooches warm and dry at night. I don't know. It's the artist's rendition of what the shelter made of rocks would probably look like. Mm-hmm. Like the builders of the Great Pyramid, or the mysteries of Loch Ness, we may never know why Deb's quote about rocks is so funny. It might just go down as a mystery of the unknown. All I know is that it's freaking hilarious. Oh, and I know that a shelter made of rocks would have probably killed them. Rocks. I tried to get a shelter built out of rocks, but none of that even mattered. P.S. P.S. Yes, I know. I'm going to hell. Oh, P.P.S. No, Deb didn't really hang herself. That's just an old joke from my column over at Survivor Central. I used to always refer to Deb as the one who hanged herself. Jeez. She's still quite alive as far as I know, and I believe she is still probably a lover of rocks.
tough.
It's probably like one of the I think the reason why my assumption is the reason he made that joke is because it's like you can't talk about Deb. No one, because I'm assuming in the fandom there was like you can't make fun of Deb. You can't talk about
She's had
negatively
a hard
about Deb
time.
because she had a hard time, and so he's like yeah we can't talk about her because she killed her, so she hung
That's
herself.
hard.
We get
That's
it.
crazy. All right.
She hanged herself, rather it would be.
All right. So here's the next one's the last one for this episode, number 50.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Gary Hogaboom. I only play him on TV. Guatemala,
There he is.
multiple episodes. Here's Gary Hawkins. God, I love this
Excellent.
storyline. I can't even begin to tell you how much I enjoyed the story arc of Gary. I'm not Gary Hogaboom. The idea that a famous or semi-famous person would go on Survivor and have to lie about their identity made me so giddy that I knew we would be in for some memorable moments. Because there's no way you can lie about something like that on national TV without something interesting happening. And I'm happy to say I was not disappointed. There he is, Gary Hogaboom.
There he is. There's his tops guard.
Gary Hogaboom played quarterback in the NFL for parts of 10 seasons. He wasn't a first-tier star by any stretch of the imagination, but he does have name recognition if you talk to people who know anything about football. I mean, you can't have a weird name like Hogaboom and not have people remember it, especially when you were the starting quarterback for arguably the most popular team, Dallas Cowboys, in America. Here is Gary's playing record in case you're interested, and note that he never would have been considered a star. So anyway, the Hogster retires in 1999.
The Hogster.
We don't expect to ever hear from him again. We figure he will disappear into the great unknown like all obscure NFL football players, and we'll never hear from the guy for the rest of our lives. But then suddenly, Gary Hogaboom shows up 16 years later as a cast member of Survivor Guatemala. His name just pops up out of nowhere, and meanwhile, millions of people are scratching their heads saying something like, Hogaboom? Wasn't he a football player of some sort? Or am I thinking of that landscaper guy, Gary Hawkins? Because I do tend to get those guys awfully confused. Yeah, so is Gary Hogaboom's strategy going to Survivor Guatemala, since other players might recognize his goofy last name, and because some of them might hold it against him that he's probably a multimillionaire, Gary was going to make up a fake identity and just lie if anybody thought they knew who he really was. Gary Hogaboom, the quarterback, was now just Gary Hawkins, landscaper, and if anybody ever caught on, he would just deny. Gary telling us about his deny everything policy. So Gary goes on Survivor and he tries to pass himself off as Gary Hawkins, and in most cases he might have been able to pull this off. But what do you know, in the Guatemala season there happens to be a chick on the other tribe named Danny, and Danny happens to be a sports radio host. And not only did she know a lot about sports, in general she also happens to have a poster of Gary Hogaboom hanging on her wall back at home. That's right, Danny's father had always been a big Dallas Cowboys fan, so she recognized Mr. Gary Hogaboom the minute she set foot in Guatemala. In fact, the first thing she probably said to her tribe at the start of day one was something along the lines of, oh, hey, there's Gary Hogaboom, the Dallas quarterback from 80 to 85. That's weird. What do you think he's doing here? I taught Hogaboom. I did Tia Hogaboom. So Gary's cover was blown, and it was blown hard. Danny knew exactly who he was. She told pretty much everybody else in the game who he was, and Gary Hawkins effectively died before he really had a chance to play the game. But did that affect Gary? Did he ever let it get to him? Hell no. The man had been a damn NFL quarterback, for God's sake. He knew what it was like to play under pressure, so never for a minute did he admit that Danny was right and that he was actually Gary Hogaboom. He actually tried to stick with the Gary Hawkins lie, even while faced with overwhelming anecdotal evidence against him. All throughout the game, Gary kept saying things like, Gary Hogaboom, NFL quarterback, I wish. And meanwhile, Danny's standing right next to him, trying not to giggle. She knows he is Gary Hogaboom. Everybody knows he is Gary Hogaboom. But never for a minute does Gary waver and actually give in. He keeps trying to pull off the Hawkins story, and no matter what she does, there's no way Danny's ever going to get him to fess up. Gary who? Hoga what? Never heard of him. The funniest part of this whole storyline, and one of my favorite moments of Guatemala, is when Danny actually identifies the fact that Gary Hogaboom went to Central Michigan. How she remembers that he went to Central's beyond me, and it's sort of creepy when you stop to think about it. But Danny reels off this info, and she waits to see how Mr. Hogaboom is going to react. Is he still going to deny it now, even when she knows that he went to Central Michigan? And that, oh, I don't know, she actually has a fucking poster of him on her wall? Yeah, you were a quarterback at Central Michigan, remember? I went to your fantasy football camp, and you told me I was the best player. What kills me about this scene is that the fact that Gary doesn't deny it. He actually admits that he went to Central, and then he follows it up with, oh, sure, I went to Central, but I'm not Gary Hogaboom.
What? Yeah, why would you? Oh, sure, I went to Central? What?
Ha 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 ha. Okay, so let me get this straight. He's expecting her to believe that there's another Gary from Central Michigan who graduated about the same year as Gary Hogaboom and is about the same age and they're not the same guy. Despite the fact they're both 8 feet tall, they're both amazing athletes. They look like Lurch from the Adams Family. I actually thought she would buy that story. Gary's ridiculous admission that yes, he went to Central pleased me on so many levels. Because first off, I realized that he can now admit to anything Danny says, so long as he followed up with, "But I'm not Gary Hogaboom." He thought it would somehow be plausible. For example, Gary actually believed that he could pull off any of the theoretical conversations below. Danny, weren't you drafted in the 5th round of the 1980 draft? Oh, sure, of course, but I'm not Gary Hogaboom. But you threw for 162 yards against Washington in the 1982 playoffs, right? Well, yeah, but I also did a bunch of landscaping for the team right afterwards. I was surprised they let me suffer Gary Hogaboom that day. So you're telling me you aren't married to Christy Hogaboom and sleep with her every night? Well, of course I do, but you better not tell Gary Hogaboom because he's liable to kick my ass. Dude, I have a poster of you on my wall that you autographed when I was 8 years old, and you aren't Gary Hogaboom? Well, it's possible I signed a poster for you. After all, they do have a lot of landscaping conventions in the greater Kansas City area. But I don't think Gary Hogaboom was there that day, too. At least I don't remember him being there. And I have a pretty good memory for that sort of thing. That's a good bit.
Yeah, good stuff.
So anyway, yes, I always loved how Gary admitted going to Central Michigan, but he still wouldn't admit that he was Gary Hogaboom. He never had Danny fooled for a second. There was no way he could deny the truth at that point, yet he still gamely carried on in spite of all the evidence against him. And if that's not the guy you want on the field with 2 minutes left to play, I don't know who is. Personally, I don't think that Joe McIntosh, Montana, John Ebbets Elway, or Brett Franz Fav could have pulled off the lie for a second. The only person who could was Gary Hawkins Hogaboom. To this day, he remains the best NFL quarterback who wasn't really an NFL quarterback in Survivor history. Okay.
Still not Gary Hogaboom.
There you go. Iconic. He's an icon.
I'm not a Gary Hogaboom. I only play him on TV.
That's good stuff right there.
Incredible.
Well, there you have it. That's the Survivor Funny 115, another installment there.
Always a delight.
We're down to the top 50 left, so we're in there. But, you can
top 50 moments for these seasons
for the first 11 or 12. Did they mention Panama? Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess, man, I'm not sure. Not this time around, anyway.
But yeah. So in the description, you can check it out if you haven't seen it already. It's Survivor the Funny 115, and it's www.funny115.com. All right, so there you go. It's another great edition right there.
Good stuff. Good to brush off some of the cobwebs here. It has been quite a while since we've done this.
Yeah.
But happy to get back to it. Remember some of the fond times of you finally get to talk about Peter being weird, and maybe he wasn't that weird, but he did talk about holes.
That's right.
So
maybe sometime I'll be able to do like a compilation of them or something that we could actually react to. It'd be good to see him actually in action. All right. Thanks for watching the channel. Subscribe for Survivor every week, as well as a variety of other content, movie reviews, TV, games, a lot of stuff. Until next time, I'm going to recommend a video for you to go check out on our channel. All right.
Random rules.
By complete random, I'm going to recommend go check out our review of Joker Folie à Deux.
Okay. And we did talk about that movie. You would think there would be a lot of laughs to be had there, but maybe not.
It's not a joking matter, really.
Not a joking matter.
Neither movie is, but yeah, they both hit different. They're both not joyous in different ways, but check it out and take care of yourself. All right.
Yeah.